This is so fun to have an old friend with us here. We have Congressman Sean Duffy in studio with us today. And, you know, Sean, we go back for a long time in the sense that we both served on the Republican Party of Wisconsin's executive committee when Reince Priebus was chairman.
We go that far back when Reince was a lowly Wisconsin, not trying to the big RNC, but hey, it's great to be here with both of you. Thanks for having me on. There's so much stuff going on. Prince and...
Right, we talked about earlier.
Do you have a great memory of Prince?
No, I don't. No.
Okay, I was going to explain to you what is it about Prince, and it's the call.
He wasn't my kind of guy.
No, I'm with you on that. So Congressman, I want to ask you a quick question. The chattering class in Washington had a piece in Politico the last couple of days theorizing that Speaker Paul Ryan is going to face the same demise as John Boehner, and the honeymoon is over, and the conference is going to be quickly divided. You're in those meetings. I'm not convinced Paul Ryan is like John Boehner. He's done some major things to kind of change how the House is operating, to change the atmosphere, trying to bring people together. What do you think about that?
That could be further from the truth. I mean, Paul Ryan has done an excellent job starting to bring the party together. I mean, we all know Paul Ryan is a conservative and has fought for conservative principles and ideas ever since he got to Washington. I mean, just think back when he was doing his budgets, you know, the Pathway to Prosperity budgets that the left lit him up for, relentlessly targeted him, and he would do it when no one else would. And everyone who's come to Washington as a member of Congress understands Paul Ryan's history. And he bonds the conference, but you can't deny that our conference is split. So you have to recognize we have some Chicago Republicans and some New York Republicans and California Republicans. They are not the most conservative Republicans. And then we have some great Wisconsinites, Texas, South Carolina, like Trey Gowdy. They're very conservative, and it's Paul Ryan's job to bring everybody together. And sometimes that can be really hard. And I think he's doing a way better job than John Boehner. And one of the things that Paul did as a former committee chairman is instead of consolidating power with leadership, he said, I'm not here to make all the decisions. He's giving power back to the committees, the people that have expertise, and letting them drive legislation out of their committee, bringing bills to the floor and saying, if you guys want to offer amendments and debate this, and we'll do that. Now, the problem might be, you might not know what the end product is going to be. We don't know what amendments will pass or fail, but I think our founders envisioned the House working that way, and Paul Ryan has been amazing in getting us back to letting the House work its will. So I think those are just attacks on Paul Ryan. They don't have any brand of truth. He's still really well liked in our conference.
Just a question about Paul Ryan again. He was such a policy wonk, and he was so smart when it came to the budget. Is he going to be able to still have his fingers in some of the budget processes and writing some of that legislation now as Speaker? Is he really getting that up?
So not just budgets, but tax reform. And tax reform is going to be really important as we look forward, not to this president. He doesn't really want to do tax reform, but to hopefully another president in January who will work with us. But I think Paul understands what his role is. He's a Speaker. And there's other chairmen of these committees. Paul understands the policy really well. And yes, he might express his opinion, but he's not going to take the power away from the chairman. They get to run their committees, their chairmanship, and they get to drive these bills. So I would say there's not a whole lot of daylight between the Paul Ryan vision and the new chairman of each of these committees. So not a lot of infighting.
Well, that does seem to be going to the point of how Washington is just not used to people taking individual members of Congress seriously. I mean, you had Nancy Pelosi in there for a while. She kind of ran with iron fist and Democrats in the majority. Then John Boehner kind of, for whatever his pluses and minuses, he felt like he had to do what he had to do to keep the conference united. But Paul Ryan's bringing in kind of this fresh perspective and really decentralizing that. That makes every single member of Congress, including those that are very conservative, including those that are maybe less conservative, more important to the process because they have a greater role to play now. They've got a greater stake in what the end product looks like.
They have more buy-in to the end product. And frankly, everybody should have a say in what the end legislation looks like. You can offer your amendment, you can vote it, you can get it up or down, and that's the way it's supposed to work. And I think when people in Congress feel more empowered, they appreciate that loosening of the grip from the Speaker, and that's what Paul's done. And again, you do have the buy-in, and I think you have a better product that comes out of the House. Because one of the problems, I know people go back to the omnibus bill they were pretty frustrated about, and I won't go there.
There's a lot of weeds.
But it comes back to, I remember that horrible shooting in South Carolina, and that's when Nikki Haley brought down the Confederate flag. Not a big issue for Northern folks. We won the war. We weren't too concerned about that. But John Boehner, so Democrats did after this. Democrats started offering amendments on the Confederate flag that made it really hard for Southerners to vote on it. Instead of making members of Congress take those votes, John Boehner stopped the appropriations process. Paul Ryan said, listen, you're all big boys and girls. You ran for office. You're going to take some tough votes. I'm not going to protect you. We're going to open this thing up, and you're going to vote on really great things, really tough things. But I'm not going to protect us from amendments and votes. This is what you're here to do, and I think that's a really great approach.
Paul Ryan, we could not be more proud of him out as Speaker in Washington, D.C. This is Michelle Lichens and Brian Sickman sitting in for Charlie Sykes with Congressman Sean Duffy. We will be right back.
It's 11:15. You're listening to Radio 620 WTMJ. Michelle Lichens, Brian Sickman in for Charlie Sykes. We are joined in studio by Congressman Sean Duffy. 2 words. Puerto Rico. What's going on? You're at the center of this so-called controversy. Break it down. Why are you talking about it? You're from Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin. Why does Puerto Rico matter?
Well, so first off, Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, and everyone who lives on the island, they're U.S. citizens. They have done some really bad budgeting. They have billions of dollars in debt. They don't have enough money to pay for the island finances, and there's a huge economic crisis. People are suffering on the island. We have schools that are closing down, fire engines and ambulances that aren't getting funded, floors of hospitals because they don't pay the electric bill are getting shut down. It's a crisis on the island. And there's a debate going on. What do we do? We have a head of bondholders that are part of a hedge fund. They're running ads on Fox News. I'm not sure if you get them here, but they're attacking members of Congress who want to address this issue. We believe as conservatives that if you make an investment in Puerto Rico and they don't have enough money to pay you back, that you should bear the loss of that investment, not the taxpayers. We don't have a taxpayer bailout of Puerto Rico. Some of the bondholders are very savvy. They say, you know what? If we do nothing in Congress and this crisis in Puerto Rico moves from Spanish language television to Fox News and CNN and MSNBC and people see the crisis on the island, there'll be a call for a taxpayer bailout. And the bond then that you bought at 60 cents on the dollar, where you're getting 12% return on it, all of a sudden is going to be a huge return for you. So they want nothing to be done. So we send taxpayer money. We're going to allow the Puerto Ricans to restructure their debt. Most of the bondholders agree with this. And we're going to put in a control board to take away some of the control of their finances so we get sound budgeting and financing and put them on the pathway to fiscal health. But again, the conservative model is we don't send taxpayer money. Those made investment bear the loss.
And isn't this happening because the first draw on their budget every year in Puerto Rico is to pay down their debt?
Right.
So instead of paying for their schools, and instead of being structured like other states where you can't have that and pay for it in a different fashion, that's why it's specifically happening in Puerto Rico.
Well, specifically, what they've done is they just continue to find new revenue streams to borrow against, and there's no fiscal control, there's no fiscal management. And frankly, some listeners might go, well, that's what's happening in Washington.
Right.
Duly noted. This is a foreshadowing of what's to come here. But again, you have to allow them to restructure the debt. Make sure the bondholders, find out, okay, what am I going to get for my investment? Let's get on a payment path so I can pay down my debt and get my interest payment figured out. But it's challenging when folks use the system to try to get taxpayer money and make big dollars. And there's one thing that not just conservatives, but everyone gets angry at is if you believe in capitalism on the way up and socialism on the way down, where you get all the profit when there's profit to be had, but when there's big losses, they want the taxpayer to step in and bail them out. We are going to prohibit that from happening. We're going to make sure the taxpayer is protected and doesn't bail out Puerto Rico.
Well, that's the essence of free markets. It's the fact that you can benefit from success, but you also have to bear the consequences of those poor investments. Now, one thing that some critics have complained about, they don't think that the bill you're a part of, that you're pushing through, would actually force Puerto Rico to change its ways. I think it's a myth that's floating around that Puerto Rico is going to continue on its merry little way, and that bondholders are somehow the victims here.
So we have a very strong control board. It's modeled after the DC control board that was very effective in getting DC's budget back in order. Now, the control board, if Puerto Rico wants to name a part, the control board will have no impact on that. But the budgeting and the finances of Puerto Rico, the plan on the fiscal side of Puerto Rico is going to be run by a control board, 4 Republicans and 3 Democrats. And that's the only way you can get things back in line. The politicians don't have the will and the political capital to get this done, and that's why the control board is a key part of it. That's how you get the fiscal house in order, but then you also got to figure out how do you restructure the debt. And we accomplish both of those goals in our proposal.
Okay, so under your plan,
yes,
government's not picking winners and losers. It's simply saying there's a firewall between what taxpayers will do and what Puerto Rico needs to do with its finances. And so it's for Puerto Rico to work on. I think it's important to explain this because as I've seen the news coverage, I mean, you've been taking some hits about, well, this is nothing but a giveaway to make sure that bondholders are the ones that are bearing all the consequences here. It doesn't do enough. I understand some of kind of very unspecified concerns, which I don't think is very helpful to the legislative process. But you're convinced this at the end of the day is still going to make sure that the Puerto Rican taxpayers and that the American taxpayers are protected, and this is for the government of Puerto Rico to work out with debt holders. That's right. So the Puerto Rican taxpayer is going to hopefully have his debt restructured and they're going to have to pay for it. But I don't want every other taxpayer in Wisconsin to fund that debt in Puerto Rico. And so again, 2 components. You have a control board that brings fiscal responsibility and sanity to the island of Puerto Rico, and then you have the bondholders that are going to still have priority. You can go through the prioritization and who has what priority. That'll still exist, but they'll be able to restructure that debt and make some reforms and some haircuts that are going to make it affordable for the island. And bondholders, listen, they're spending millions of dollars running ads against members of Congress who are trying to protect taxpayers, trying to dupe them, trying to fool them into believing that our bill is going to allow for a taxpayer bailout. Which is, listen, you think any conservatives are going to send Wisconsin taxpayer money to Puerto Rico? Absolutely not.
Is this going to pass?
I think so. I know we're still working on some of the finer points, and this is important for people. I mean, it's important that we help the Puerto Rican economy get back on track. You should also know one thing: these are Americans. What's happening in this crisis is the Puerto Ricans that don't have opportunity on the island, they're flying to Florida. It's like when you go from Milwaukee to Chicago, you get a vote in Illinois. They vote in Florida. And I don't know if anyone talks about the state of Florida and why it's relevant in November, but think about that. We need to be part of the solution that doesn't get away tax dollars, but does make bondholders take a haircut.
I think this is a great suggestion. This is Michelle Litchins and Brian Sickman sitting in for Charlie Sykes on 620 WTMJ.